Hello, welcome to Revenant Reads. I'm Vin, and this is another edition of Fresh Red Kills. So, Fresh Red Kills is where I talk about books that I have recently finished reading. I'm going to be talking about two books that I read at the end of November. We're a little bit more than a week into December, so I'm a little bit late with this, but that's par for the course for me. So the books I'm going to be talking about are Stiff by Mary Roach and Accidental Czar, The Life and Lives of Vladimir Putin by Andrew S. Weiss. So I guess we'll start off with Stiff. I had read this actually for nonfiction November, a booktube event, annual booktube event, where, just like it sounds, basically read nonfiction. Now, I am somebody who reads nonfiction all year anyway. The majority of what I read, excuse me, voice has been doing funny things lately. The majority of which I read is probably like 80 to 90% nonfiction anyway. But for Nonfiction November, I basically decided to read a bunch of nonfiction books that were not history, because history is generally the type of nonfiction I read, that were not history, that have been sitting on my shelves for a long time. And this is definitely one of them. I also have Mary Roach's book Spook behind me, somewhere over on this shelf, actually, right here. That maybe I'll get to next year, maybe I'll get to before that. I'm not sure. But again, I have been meaning to read this for a long time. And when I had announced in an earlier video that I was reading this, I had a few viewers actually warn me in the comments that basically they didn't all gel with Mary Roach's humor. So I was kind of on the lookout for that as I read this. So essentially, this was actually published a little bit earlier than I thought it was when I first picked it up. So this was published in 2003. I'm way late to reading this. And she is looking at the various ways that people have used human cadavers. Now, this could be, for medical science, essentially having medical students practice on dead bodies. It could also be things like, let me just look at the the contents here to remind me of myself. Ballistics testing, essentially. What do bullets or explosives do to bodies? Bodies falling from planes in order to solve certain aviation disaster mysteries. Cannibalism. She even goes into some historic stuff like the resurrectionists like Burke and Hare. And I did find this, utterly fascinating. It really, really was. Now, her humor, I can understand why it would kind of grate on some people. I didn't mind it most of the time. It did feel like, especially in the beginning of the book, I think she kind of eases off of it as the book goes on. But it just felt like, the sometimes the jokes come in such rapid succession that you end up cringing a little bit. If you feel like you're like she's reaching maybe a little bit too much for some of these jokes, like she can't pass up a pun really without picking it up and using it. But for the most part, it didn't really distract me all that much. And I thought, also for the most part, she is a pretty decent writer. Now, of course, humor in this situation, I don't really mind. I think that some gallows humor is probably appropriate on a book dealing with death. And I did learn quite a bit. Some parts, I'm somebody with a pretty strong disposition when it comes to the macabre. But even I had some points where I'm like, oh, that's pretty gross. The thing that was more upsetting, though, in this is when she recounts all the various times that animals were basically needlessly tortured and killed, sometimes for really dubious experiments. I found that more upsetting than anything that was being done with these dead bodies, really. But it definitely, confirmed my belief that, something I've come to believe very strongly is that death is largely without dignity. There's no nice way to die. You are going to look dumb. You're going to look ridiculous when you're laying there dead, no matter where you die or how you die. It's one of those things I kind of, when I do pass away, it's not my kids that find me. I don't want them having that image in their head because I'm sure I will look absolutely ridiculous and goofy. And even after death, there's no really nice way to dispose of a body that is going to rot, that is going to go away. And she's really promoting in here overall, basically donating bodies to medical science. That's one of the more driving threads that we see throughout this. That whether you're in a box in the ground or whether you're cremated, it's not going to be pretty no matter what. And you might as well maybe get some, maybe some people could be helped in the future because you donated your body to science. And that's kind of one of the things that she's getting at in this. And yeah, but I did enjoy this overall. I thought it was pretty good, and I do look forward to getting to Spook when that time comes. And I also read this before November ended. This was a Historathon read. Historathon 2023 is a year-long reading event where we read nonfiction history. There's that nonfiction again. And we split the year up into 4 quarters, and from October, November, December, it is the 4th quarter where we look at the years 1820 to the present. And so I read that really for this. And this is something that I had gotten really cheap off of Hamilton Books, a kind of discount bookseller based out of Connecticut. And I always find really good stuff on there, stuff that I didn't, stuff that has flown under my radar. And this is a graphic novel. So you can see some of the illustrations here. Written by Andrew S. Weiss, who was a Russia expert. He worked under the Clinton administration back in the 90s. And the illustrations are by Brian Box Brown. And it is, like I said, very, very simple illustrations. Not not detailed at all. They're very cartoonish, but they get the job done. They're fine. And very simple also inking and coloring. And essentially what Weiss is doing, he is giving us background into who Vladimir Putin is, trying to give us insight into his worldview. This is very much an American perspective on Vladimir Putin, and very much, I would say, a democratic American perspective on Vladimir Putin, especially with the way that certain segments of our population politically have come to sometimes idolize or sympathize with or defend Vladimir Putin. He's definitely of not that ilk. He is very condemning of that and very clear where he sees maybe some, I don't know, I think collusion might be too strong of a word, but certainly a delusional influence from Putin upon certain segments of the American political spectrum. And he kind of bounces back and forth between Putin's rise to power, how he got to where he is, and really wants to offer a perspective as to, how he operates, how he thinks, how different Putin is really from the way that maybe an American would think. And I think he does a pretty good job with that. There's a little bit of humor in here, but really it's fairly straightforward. We've got Putin gearing up to do some judo and stuff. Just to show you some more illustrations. And this does come right up to the invasion of Ukraine, which is nice. So this is still something that is relevant, still something that is timely. So I would recommend, actually, if people can find this cheap, because the thing is, it's definitely informative. It doesn't break any new ground, but it did fill in some gaps that I had as far as Putin and things that have happened over the last 20 years that maybe just kind of, I didn't quite understand fully, but I have a better understanding now. But this is a very quick graphic novel. You could read this in a single sitting, no problem. I almost read it in one sitting, and then I had to go do something with my kids, so I sat down for another 15, 20 minutes the next day and finished it. But you could definitely pump this out in a single afternoon, no problem. But yeah, I liked it. Nice way to kind of, bring November to an end. This was actually the 3rd graphic novel that I read in this quarter of Historathon. I had read Mouse and I had read Persepolis, and so this was the last one that I wanted to get to. So that's it. Those are the 2 books that I read at the end of November. I've got Stiff by Mary Roach and The Accidental Czar by not by Vladimir Putin, by Andrew S. Weiss. If you've read any of these, love to hear your thoughts. As always, thank you, BookTube.